Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for On SI every single day since August 2019, and we continue to march through yet another season together. As always, you can find our 100% free 24/7 boots on the ground content covering the Jacksonville Jaguars when you follow us on social media such as Facebook and Twitter at Jaguars on SI. You can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. All right, folks, welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and today we're going to talk about the Jaguars' kind of conundrum at the wide receiver position entering week 4 against the San Francisco 49ers. A big game for the Jaguars this week. 2-1 Jaguars going on the road to take on the 3-0 San Francisco 49ers. The Jaguars have not played well against the 49ers in the past. I remember 2023, it's a really highly anticipated game at home in Jacksonville, and the 49ers just completely blew the door off of the Jaguars. And it was then that I said my big observation coming away from there was that the Jaguars just aren't in that top tier at that point. And this was when the Jaguars were really rolling under Doug Peterson, when they started 8-3. And my big thought was, okay, the Jaguars, they're winning games, etc. But they aren't one of the top dogs because they played a top dog in the 49ers and 49ers rolled them. Obviously, we saw how the 2023 season ended. We saw how 2024 went. Now we are in 2025, and things are so much different in Jacksonville than they were 2 years ago. I mean, since the Jaguars last played the 49ers, guys on the field in that game, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Tank Bigsby, Jamal Agnew, none of those guys still with the Jaguars. Defensively, Mike Caldwell was still defensive coordinator. Obviously, Doug Peterson was head coach. Things are incredibly different in Jacksonville now than they were in 2023. And I think that if the Jaguars can go on the road and kind of steal one this week, you go into 3-1 in week 5 on Monday Night Football. You take down a 3-0 49ers team that, even with all their injuries, including at quarterback, is playing really well. It's a pretty good place to be in. But one of the key aspects to whether the Jaguars can do that, whether the Jaguars can go into San Francisco and make a statement, is the state of their passing game. The passing game the Jaguars had in week 3, they will not win many games with. Now, they've had a dominant defense for most of 2025, outside of a few lapses against the Cincinnati Bengals and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. But, against the Panthers and against the Texans, I'd say for, probably 9 of the 12 quarters the Jaguars have played this year, they've had one of the better defenses in the NFL. And because of that defense, they've been able to beat up on teams that either have struggling quarterbacks, such as the Panthers and Bryce Young, or teams where the offense as a whole is just stagnant, such as C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans. This is a 49ers offense, though, that, it's led by Kyle Shanahan, obviously one of the game's best offensive minds. I know they have injuries with George Kittle, they have injuries with Juwan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk, but Ricky Pearsall's played really good. Christian McCaffrey's caught the ball well. Mac Jones has produced, as the 49ers starting quarterback while Brock Purdy's been hurt. I think that the Jaguars will play Brock Purdy this week. And obviously, Brock Purdy, I think even injured, is, the worst possible option for the Jaguars to play against this week if they want to win. I think if they played Mac Jones, I could see them being a trendy pick to win, but I expect it to be Brock Purdy. And to beat Kyle Shanahan, to beat Brock Purdy, the Jaguars need to figure out a way for their passing game to become explosive and become consistent. Because that's what's been lacking so far. I mean, we talked about it. 0-8 on deep balls this year. I asked Liam Cohen about the deep ball on Wednesday. And I asked him, what does it take for that part of the offense to start clicking? And he very bluntly said, needs to start in practice. You need to hit those deep balls in practice. And the way he answered it, it did not sound like that's what's been happening. Now, the two biggest factors going on, well, really three biggest factors going on with the passing game as we sit here today. One, obviously, is Brian Thomas Jr. He has just not played very good football the last 2 weeks. I think a lot of his issues week 1 were Trevor Lawrence based. Week 2, I put most of those on Brian. And then week 3, I mean, he just had 2 egregious drops. And then a third play that I'm not sure I call it a drop, but it's a play that he needs to come down with. A play that, we've seen him make in the past. And that deep ball, obviously, against Stingley that he ended up not catching. So I think Brian Thomas Jr. not being on his game has been a big reason the passing game has been better. I think another reason is they just naturally have had to have a limited role for Travis Hunter. I mean, one of the most electric athletes on the team. You got finally a taste and a sample size of it. Very small sample size, but nonetheless, I made 1 catch against the Houston Texans, but he caught the out route, quickly made a man miss, made a second one miss. Great explosiveness, great yards after the catch, great body control. Just a really impressive play from Travis Hunter. But other than that, you haven't seen much more from him. You've seen him run a lot of short choice routes. You've seen him run a lot of screens, but you've seen the Jaguars pretty much, I think, everything over 10 yards they've yet to hit with him this year. Trevor's thrown 2 interceptions throwing to him. He almost threw a third on Sunday. And it just seemed like that there are a lot of instances where, they had to call a timeout on Sunday against the Texans because it seemed like Travis didn't really know where to line up. Coming out of the timeout, he's not even on the field. And Jaguars head coach Liam Cohen talked about this on Wednesday. He said that there's things they can do to make things easier on him. Maybe take some of the motions out, maybe just kind of simplify his role. But he also said that even with injuries going on at wide receiver, which we will discuss in a moment, he doesn't envision his role changing. He plays one position on offense, one position on defense. His position on offense is as the starting slot receiver. His position on defense is as an outside corner. So essentially he's saying, no. Right now he's being tasked with doing too much. He's not going to move around the formation. He's not going to be tasked to play Z or play X. He's not going to be asked to play inside cornerback. He is playing 2 roles, and they are trying to prepare him for both. And it's obviously been, I wouldn't say necessarily a difficult transition, but obviously he hasn't had the offensive numbers that I think anybody, himself included, probably expects. Now, why that's in key this week is because De'Ami Brown, dealing with a shoulder injury, didn't see him at practice when the media was out there on Wednesday. I mean, the Jaguars just seemingly, haven't been giving updates on him when we've asked on Monday and Wednesday. So probably have to wait until really Sunday to see whether De'Ami Brown will be good to go. And if De'Ami Brown's not, well, your 5-man receiver room quickly becomes a 4-man receiver room. You see Parker Washington probably step up for him, but you don't see Travis Hunter's role changing. And those are the 3 things that I think they really need to tackle right now. They need to get Brian Thomas Jr. going. They need to figure out how to expand Travis Hunter's responsibilities on offense without putting more and too much on his plate. And now they need to navigate what it looks like with De'Ami Brown potentially set to miss Sunday's game. So a lot of questions for the Jaguars passing game moving forward as we enter, week 4. But these are questions that sooner or later they're going to have to answer. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. Be back next time.